Think back to that one family dinner where the tension was so thick you could practically slice it with a butter knife. Maybe your parents were arguing about the mortgage, or perhaps your older sister was home from college and radiating a silent, moody resentment that made everyone else want to disappear into the floorboards. In that suffocating silence, you felt it, that itchy, urgent pressure in your chest. You didn't even think about it. You just opened your mouth and cracked a joke. It was probably self-deprecating, maybe a little absurd, or perhaps just a perfectly timed observation about the lumpy mashed potatoes. Whatever it was, the tension snapped. People laughed, the air cleared, and for a fleeting moment, you were the hero of the dinner table. You were the funny one. It's a title we wear like a badge of honor, isn't it? We're the life of the party, the person everyone wants at their happy hour, the one with the quick wit that can diffuse a nuclear argument. But if you grew up as the designated comedian of your social or family circle, you know that this badge can start to feel incredibly heavy after a while. Behind the punchlines and the perfectly timed impressions, there is a fascinating, complex, and sometimes heartbreaking psychological blueprint that dictates how you see the world, and, more importantly, how you see yourself. We often assume that being funny is just a personality trait, a lucky roll of the genetic dice that makes someone naturally charismatic. But in the world of psychology, humor is rarely just about being born with it. It is often a sophisticated, highly developed survival mechanism. It's a bridge we build to connect with others when we don't feel safe enough to show our true selves, or a shield we hoist to protect a vulnerable core. If you were the funny kid, you weren't just making people laugh. You were performing a role that kept your world stable. Imagine your childhood home not just as a house, but as an ecosystem. Every ecosystem needs balance, and in families where there is high conflict, emotional neglect, or even just a general sense of instability, children often take on specific roles to keep the system functioning. This is what family systems theorists call the mascot role. As the mascot, your job was to provide the comic relief. If things got too dark, you brought the light. If things got too quiet, you brought the noise. You learned very early on that your value was tied to your ability to alter the emotional state of the people around you. It's a remarkable skill if you think about it. At 6 or 7 years old, you were essentially a junior emotional regulator, scanning the room for micro-expressions of anger or sadness and deploying humor like a tactical strike to keep the peace. This creates a brain that is hyper-attuned to other people's needs. You became a master of reading the room, a skill that serves you well in job interviews today, but might leave you feeling exhausted because you can never truly turn it off. You aren't just listening to what people say, you're monitoring the pitch of their voice, the tension in their shoulders, and the way their eyes narrow, all while your brain is rapidly cycling through potential jokes to keep the vibe safe. There is a concept in psychology called reaction formation, where a person seeks to cover up an uncomfortable or socially unacceptable feeling by exaggerating its opposite. For the funny child, this often means using humor to mask profound sadness or anxiety. It's the sad clown paradox that we see in so many legendary comedians. By making everyone else laugh, you create a temporary illusion that everything is okay. If you can make your mom laugh while she's crying, then maybe she isn't really that sad. If you can make the school bully laugh, then maybe he won't notice how small you feel. Humor becomes a form of affect regulation. You aren't just managing the room, you're managing your own internal chaos by projecting a version of yourself that is untouchable and perpetually amused. But the catch is that when you spend your formative years as a performer, you start to believe that the performer is the only part of you that is lovable. You begin to fear that if you stop joking, if you show up as your quiet, messy, or grieving self, the people around you will lose interest, or worse, they won't know what to do with you. This leads to a strange kind of loneliness, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who love your highlights but have never actually met your shadows. Let's talk about the armor of the funny person. Humor is one of the most effective defense mechanisms ever devised by the human psyche because it's socially rewarded. Unlike acting out or withdrawing into silence, being funny makes people like you, but it also keeps them at arm's length. When you turn everything into a joke, you create a barrier that prevents true intimacy. Think about it. It's nearly impossible to have a deep, vulnerable conversation with someone who is constantly looking for the bit. If a friend asks you how you're really doing after a breakup, and you respond with a hilarious, scathing critique of your ex's fashion sense, you've successfully deflected the emotional weight of the question. You've won the interaction by getting a laugh, but you've also signaled that the real you is off limits. This is often an unconscious choice. It's a way of staying in control. In the theater of your life, you are the director as long as you're the one telling the jokes. You decide the tone, the pace, and the exit strategy. Vulnerability, on the other hand, is unpredictable. It's messy. It requires you to drop the script and hope that someone catches you. For someone who grew up as the funny one, that loss of control feels terrifying. It feels like standing on a stage without any clothes on, waiting for a punchline that never comes. This dynamic often manifests in what psychologists call attachment styles. Many people who use humor as a primary way of relating to others have what's known as an avoidant or disorganized attachment style. Because early caregivers may have been inconsistent or emotionally unavailable, the child learned that direct requests for comfort were either ignored or met with frustration. So they adapted. They learned to get attention sideways. Humor is a low-stakes way to seek connection. If I tell a joke and you laugh, I feel seen and validated, but I haven't actually risked anything. If you don't laugh, I can just move on to the next joke. I haven't put my heart on the line. It's a brilliant way to survive a childhood where emotional safety was a luxury, but as an adult, it can leave your relationships feeling two-dimensional. You might find that you have dozens of friends, but very few people who truly know the texture of your inner world. You might even feel like an imposter in your own life, playing the character of the witty friend while the real you sits in the back row, watching the show and wondering when it's going to end. Interestingly, there's a neurological component to this as well. When we laugh, our brains release a cocktail of feel-good chemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. For the person telling the joke, the hit of dopamine from a successful laugh is incredibly addictive. It's a social reward that reinforces the behavior. Your brain literally maps out a path that says, when I feel uncomfortable, I tell a joke, I get a dopamine hit, and the discomfort goes away. Over time, this path becomes a superhighway. It becomes your default setting. This is why you might find yourself cracking jokes at a funeral or in the middle of a serious argument with your partner. It's not that you're disrespectful, it's that your brain is frantically trying to regulate your nervous system the only way it knows how. It's trying to get that hit of social safety to dial down the fight or flight response that's screaming in your ears. Understanding this can help you be a little kinder to yourself. That inappropriate joke wasn't a character flaw. It was your brain trying to protect you from a wave of emotion it didn't feel equipped to handle. But here is the beautiful, silver lining part of this psychological journey. Being the funny one isn't just a defense. It's a profound intellectual and creative gift. To be truly funny, your brain has to perform incredibly complex tasks at lightning speed. You have to have high linguistic intelligence to master wordplay. You have to have high social intelligence to understand the nuances of timing and subtext. Most importantly, you have to have a massive amount of empathy. You can't be funny if you don't understand how people think and feel. You are essentially a psychologist without a degree, an expert in the human condition who has spent a lifetime observing the contradictions and absurdities of life. This means you possess a unique kind of resilience. You have the ability to find meaning in the mundane and light in the dark. Humor, when used consciously rather than reactively, is one of the highest forms of human maturity. It allows us to look at the tragedies of life and say, I see you, you are painful, but you do not have the final word. The challenge for the funny person is not to lose their sense of humor, but to integrate it. It's about learning that you don't always have to be on. Think of your humor like a powerful flashlight. For years, you've been using it to light up the whole room so no one sees the dust in the corners. Integration means learning that you can also turn that light inward, to illuminate your own needs and fears. It means realizing that you are allowed to be boring. You are allowed to be sad. You are allowed to sit in a room with a friend and say absolutely nothing, and that friend will still want to stay. This is a terrifying transition to make because it feels like you're giving up your superpower. You might worry that without the jokes, you're just empty, but the truth is exactly the opposite. When you stop performing, you finally give people the chance to see the person who was clever enough to come up with the jokes in the first place. You give them the chance to love the source, not just the output. There's a powerful metaphor in the world of art called negative space. In a painting, the negative space is the area around the subject, the nothingness that actually gives the subject its shape and meaning. For a long time, you might have seen your humor as the subject of who you are. But as you grow and heal, you start to see that the moments between the jokes, the quiet, the serious, the vulnerable, are the negative space that makes the humor meaningful. A person who is always funny is a person who is eventually exhausting. But a person who can be funny while also being deeply present is a person who is truly magnetic. You don't have to kill the comedian inside you. You just have to give them a night off. You have to let them take a seat in the audience and let the rest of your personality take the stage for a while. As you move through your adult life, you might notice that your funniness changes. It becomes less about, please like me, and more about, I see you. It becomes a tool for connection rather than a tool for deflection. You start to use your wit to make people feel seen, to highlight the shared absurdities of being human, and to create a space where everyone feels a little less alone. This is the ultimate evolution of the funny child, becoming the person who uses laughter not as a shield, but as a bridge. It's a transition from being a performer to being a participant. And yes, it will feel awkward at first. You will feel that old itch to crack a joke when a conversation gets too real. You will feel the urge to apologize for being too serious or a downer. But if you can resist that urge, even for just a few minutes, you'll discover something incredible. The people who truly care about you aren't there for the free stand-up routine. They're there for you. So if you're the one who always has the snappy comeback, the one who can find the silver lining in a thunderstorm, or the one who uses self-deprecation like a second language, take a deep breath. You've done a great job. Your humor has gotten you through some incredibly tough times. It has kept your head above water when the waves felt too high. It has won you friends and opened doors. It is a brilliant, shimmering part of who you are. But it isn't the only part. You are also the person who feels deeply, the person who thinks about the universe at 3 a.m., the person who gets scared, and the person who just wants to be held without having to say anything clever. Those parts of you are just as valuable as your wit. They are just as worthy of being heard. The next time you're in a room where the tension starts to rise, or when someone asks you a question that hits a little too close to home, try a little experiment. Take a second before you reach for the punchline. Ask yourself, what am I trying to hide right now? Or, what would happen if I just let this moment be what it is? You don't have to change overnight. You don't have to become a stoic philosopher who never cracks a smile. Just start by noticing the mechanism. Notice the mascot trying to jump out and save the day. Acknowledge them, thank them for their service, and then gently tell them they can rest for a moment. The world won't fall apart if you aren't the funniest person in the room. In fact, it might actually get a little bit bigger. We spend so much of our lives trying to be something for other people. The smart one, the successful one, the funny one. But the most radical thing you can ever do is to just be the one. To be the whole, unfiltered, unedited version of yourself, with all the jokes and all the silence included. Because at the end of the day, a laugh is a wonderful thing, but a real connection? That's the real punchline we've all been looking for. If this resonated with you, if you've spent your life hiding behind a grin, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. We're building a community of people who are learning to drop the mask, and your voice, whether it's funny or serious, is exactly what we need. Let's keep exploring the weird, wonderful layers of the human brain together. Until next time, take care of your brain, and maybe give it a little break from the jokes every once in a while. It's earned it.